I was thinking about a judge I heard about several years ago who hired a contractor to work on his home, and the judge racked up something like $400,000 worth of work on this contractor. Well, when it came time for payment, the judge refused to pay the contractor. See, the contractor was unlicensed, and so under California law, if you do contracting work and you don't have a license, then you don't have to be paid for the work that you do, because there's no state promise of support. There's no state recourse. You can't sue the man. I mean, there's always illegal methods of trying to obtain your payment, but that could just be compounding an already bad situation, especially when your target's a judge. When it comes to Christianity, there are licenses that can be got, licenses that can be used to open doors. You know, I got my doctorate degree. I'm now working on my postdoctorate studies from my seminary, Christian Bible College and Seminary, and I enjoy it. But having the doctorate piece of paper doesn't really do anything magical. I'm an ordained preacher, which means I've got a piece of paper that says I'm a preacher. It gives me a license and I can perform weddings and funerals and things. But when it comes to Christianity, there's very few areas in which the state has any realm of control. Most people who go to seminary go to non-accredited seminaries because it doesn't really matter whether or not you've got a piece of paper that says you've got a doctorate in divinity. What matters is that you know what you're talking about. I'm part of the 20% of seminarians who go to an accredited seminary, and all of these licenses that come from this state open doors for certain things. But Christianity isn't about getting licenses from men to do things. Ultimately, men have no power over Christianity. Ultimately, men have no power over whether or not to license, whether or not to sanction certain Christian actions. I mean, there's certain legal documents, 501c3 certifications that churches in America get to become non-profit organizations for tax purposes. I mean, there's certain documentation that people file, but the authority for Christian work, the authority for Christian action comes and is licensed ultimately by Almighty God. And whether or not the state gives us the legal power, whether the state gives us the legal sanction to operate, the Christian's duty is always to a higher authority. The Christian's calling is always to a bigger, more powerful, more meaningful authority than any state or federal government or city ordinance that might try and tell us something otherwise. So many Christians are hindered in their work because, well, they're not licensed to be a preacher yet, or they haven't been licensed to be a missionary yet, or they haven't been given a commission yet from a church. We need to get out of this licensed mentality. We need to get into an unlicensed mentality where we operate because God has ordained that we ought to operate. And so therefore, we ought to operate regardless of what people say, regardless of whether or not people give us authority, regardless of whether or not people give us permission. We must follow after God.